Rome did not fear Perpetua because she was violent. Rome feared her because she was calm. In the year 203 AD, the Roman Empire was not collapsing in flames or rebellion. It was collapsing in something far more dangerous: contradiction. Rome claimed order, hierarchy, tradition, and obedience. Yet it ruled a world where slaves whispered the same prayers as nobles, where women defied fathers, and where loyalty to an unseen god quietly outranked loyalty to the emperor. Rome could tolerate many things. It could not tolerate that. Perpetua was 22 years old. She was educated. She was well-born. She was recently a mother. And she was a catechumen, newly instructed in the Christian faith, not yet baptized. In Roman terms, that made her worse than a rebel. Rebels could be negotiated with. Christians could not. Her story survives because she wrote it herself. That alone should disturb you. Roman North Africa was rigidly ordered. Class was visible in clothing, speech, posture, and law. A noblewoman did not share cells with slaves. A daughter did not publicly disobey her father. A woman did not choose death over family continuity. Christianity violated all three. The Roman household was sacred. The father, paterfamilias, held authority over life, death, marriage, inheritance, and worship. Religion was not personal, it was civic duty. Refusing to sacrifice to the emperor was not private belief. It was political betrayal. This is why Perpetua's father will loom so large in the story. He was not a villain. He was Rome, fully internalized. Perpetua was arrested alongside several others: Revocatus, Saturninus, Secundulus, and Felicity. Felicity was enslaved. She was also 8 months pregnant. Rome did not arrest Christians gently. Arrest was public, humiliating, instructional. It sent a message to anyone watching. This is what happens when belief crosses hierarchy. Perpetua describes it without drama. I was terrified because I had never been in such darkness before. No metaphors, no exaggeration, just fact. The prison was overcrowded, airless, loud. Heat pressed down. Guards extorted prisoners for basic relief. The smell alone would have broken many people. Perpetua's distress, however, fixated on something else: her infant son. She writes, "I was tormented by anxiety for my child." This is not heroic language. This is maternal panic. Inside the prison, hierarchy disintegrated. Perpetua, the noblewoman, sat on the same ground as Felicity, the slave. They shared air, fear, and uncertainty. Rome's class distinctions meant nothing here. Iron bars do not recognize pedigree. This is exactly why Rome imprisoned them together. Christianity erased boundaries without violence. That terrified empire administrators more than revolt ever could. When Perpetua was finally allowed to nurse her child, the prison briefly transformed. She writes, "The prison became to me like a palace. Not because conditions improved, but because her child was near. Then the child was taken away, and the palace vanished." Perpetua's father visited her repeatedly. Each time his approach was different. He tried reason, then authority, then emotional collapse. She records his words carefully, without embellishment. "Have pity on my gray hairs, have pity on your father, if I am worthy to be called your father." This is not cruelty. This is desperation. Rome had taught him that his daughter's obedience was not optional. Her death would stain the entire family line. Worse, it would expose his failure as a patriarch. He begged her to recant. She refused, not dramatically, not defiantly. She offered an analogy instead. "Do you see this vessel lying here? Can it be called by any other name than what it is?" He answered no. "So also I cannot be called anything other than what I am, a Christian." This moment matters. Perpetua does not argue theology. She asserts identity. Rome could negotiate beliefs. It could not negotiate being. Felicity's pregnancy presented a problem. Roman law prohibited executing pregnant women. The state was not merciful. It was practical. Killing a pregnant woman meant killing an unborn Roman asset. For a moment, Felicity's body protected her. But bodies do not stay compliant. Felicity went into labor inside the prison. The pain was immediate, violent and public. Guards mocked her cries. If you suffer so much now, what will you do when you are thrown to the beasts? Felicity answered without rhetoric. Now I suffer what I suffer, but then another will be in me who will suffer for me. This is not poetry. This is psychological insulation. Pain reframed as temporary, meaning transferred elsewhere. She gave birth days before the execution. The child was taken. Rome solved its legal inconvenience. Perpetua began to experience dreams. Visions she recorded meticulously. These are not ecstatic hallucinations. They are structured, symbolic, unsettling. In one vision, she climbs a ladder lined with weapons, swords, hooks, spears, while serpent waits below. She ascends anyway. At the top, she finds a vast garden and a shepherd who offers her cheese. This is not triumphal imagery. It is initiation. Pain before ascent. Risk before nourishment. She interprets it plainly. I understood that we were to suffer. No bravado, just expectation. Roman officials believed fear would soften resolve. They misunderstood the psychology of conviction. Fear does not dissolve identity. It sharpens it. Perpetua's father returned one final time. This time he brought the child. He placed the infant before her. This was the most violent act in the story so far. She writes, "My father, in order to move me, threw the child at my feet." The child did not sway her, not because she did not love him, but because Rome had miscalculated the hierarchy of her loyalty. That hierarchy no longer included Rome at the top. They were transferred to military custody. The games were approaching. The arena was being prepared. The crowd would come expecting entertainment. Rome believed it was staging punishment. It was actually documenting its own fracture. Perpetua returned to her cell and wrote again. She did not write like someone about to die. She wrote like someone who had already crossed a line and could not return. Rome never rushed judgment. That is one of the myths it liked to tell about itself. The machinery of Roman justice was slow not because it was careful, but because it was confident. Confident that time itself would grind resistance into compliance. Confident that fear, repetition, and public exposure would wear conviction down until it cracked. Perpetua and the others were brought from the prison to the forum, not as defendants, but as examples. This was not a trial in the modern sense. Guilt was assumed. The only question left was submission. The governor of the province, Hilarianus, sat elevated above them, not out of arrogance, out of ritual. Height mattered in Rome. Power had to be seen from below. Christians were not tried for crimes like theft or murder. They were tried for refusal. Refusal to sacrifice. Refusal to acknowledge the emperor's divine authority. Refusal to participate in the rituals that stitched the empire together. This made their offense invisible and therefore intolerable. Perpetua stood among men and women of lower social rank. That alone was a public humiliation. A noblewoman was expected to be represented by male relatives, not stand accused among slaves. Rome was already bending its own rules just to stage this moment. Her father appeared again, not privately this time, publicly. Rome understood leverage. He was allowed to approach her in front of the governor and the crowd. His voice was no longer pleading. It was frantic, breaking under the weight of spectacle. Perpetua records it without commentary. My father came and tried to persuade me, saying, "Perform the sacrifice. Have pity on your child." Notice what is missing. No mention of gods. No loyalty to Rome. Only family, survival. This is where the psychological violence peaks. Rome weaponized the most intimate bond she had left. Her infant son was brought forward, not because the court required it, because the audience did. The presence of the child reframed the scene. This was no longer a matter of theology or law. It was a moral referendum staged for the crowd. Would she choose continuity or annihilation? Hilarianus spoke directly to her. "Spare the gray hairs of your father. Spare your infant son. Offer sacrifice for the welfare of the emperors." This sentence matters. Rome did not demand belief. It demanded gesture, a pinch of incense, a symbolic act. The empire could tolerate internal disbelief as long as public order remained intact. Perpetua's response was brief. "I will not." That was it. No justification. No explanation. Identity asserted again. Her father collapsed emotionally. He shouted. He wept. He attempted to physically restrain her. This broke decorum. Hilarious ordered him beaten. Not because he disrespected the governor, but because his desperation disrupted the image of control. Perpetua watched her father struck by Roman guards. She does not describe satisfaction. She does not describe guilt. She describes pain. I was grieved for my father, as though I myself had been beaten. This line exposes Rome's miscalculation. Punishing the father did not fracture her resolve. It only confirmed that Rome would destroy even its loyal citizens to preserve authority. Once refusal was clear, the rest was procedural. They were condemned to the beasts, damnatio ad bestias, a punishment reserved for those considered enemies of public order. Not criminals, enemies. The sentence was not death. It was performance. The arena transformed execution into instruction. The crowd would watch what happened to those who refused the empire's terms. Rome did not kill silently. Crowds in Rome were not passive. They were participants. Their expectations shaped the violence. Their applause calibrated its intensity. A crowd disappointed by a quick death demanded more spectacle. Christians complicated this dynamic. They did not beg. They did not curse. They did not perform fear. That unsettled the audience. Martyrdom inverted the arena's logic. The condemned were supposed to confirm Rome's dominance through visible terror. Instead, they revealed Rome's insecurity. Perpetua and the others were returned to prison to await the games, celebrating the birthday of the emperor's son. Even timing was symbolic. Imperial continuity would be celebrated with public death. Inside the cell, Perpetua writes again. She does not focus on Rome. She focuses inward. Perpetua describes another vision, this one deeply personal. She sees her deceased younger brother, Dinocratus, who had died painfully from facial cancer as a child. In the vision, he is thirsty, unable to reach water, his wounds still present. She prays for him. Later, she sees him healed, drinking freely at peace. This vision is not about death. It is about unfinished relationships. Rome believed execution ended stories. Perpetua's inner world said otherwise. Felicity had given birth days earlier. Her body was still recovering. Her milk would have come in. Her muscles would have been weak. None of that mattered. She rejoiced not because she desired death, but because she would not be excluded from it. She feared something specific, that she would not be allowed to die with the others. Separation terrified her more than execution. This is the psychological inversion Rome never understood. Before the games, Perpetua and her companions were baptized. Not in a basilica, not in safety, in a prison. She writes, "We were baptized, and the Spirit bade me not to ask for any other favor than bodily endurance." This is not triumph. This is preparation. The final night arrived. Rome expected fear to finally surface here. Insomnia, regret, last-minute compliance. Instead, witnesses reported calm conversation, prayer, even humor. This was deeply unsettling. The condemned were not behaving like condemned people. Rome's system relied on visible submission. It relied on the assumption that survival instinct would override conviction if pressure was applied long enough. Perpetua and Felicity exposed the flaw in that system. They had already reordered their internal hierarchy. Empire was no longer at the top. The sentence has been passed. The crowd has been promised spectacle. The arena is prepared. What remains is execution. But execution here is not an endpoint. It is the moment Rome believes it will finally reclaim narrative control. It is wrong. The Roman arena was not built for death. That is another myth. It was built for control. The architecture itself enforced hierarchy. Stone tiers elevated the powerful. Barriers separated citizens from violence. Gates regulated when suffering began and when it ended. Everything about the arena communicated a single message. Rome decides. On the morning of the games, Perpetua and the others were let out of prison and into this machine. They were not dragged. They walked. That detail disturbed witnesses enough that it survived in the record. Rome understood symbolism. Before the animals were released, The condemned were dressed in costumes meant to mock their faith. The men were clothed as priests of Saturn. The women, Perpetua and Felicity, were dressed as priestesses of Ceres, the goddess of fertility. This was not random cruelty. It was ideological theater. Rome was attempting to reclaim religious authority by forcing Christians to perform pagan symbolism with their bodies. Perpetua refused. So did Felicity. The crowd reacted, not with anger, but confusion. This refusal was not anticipated. Costume humiliation only works if the subject participates. The tribune ordered the costumes removed. Rome blinked. Women were not supposed to die this way. Public execution by beasts was overwhelmingly male. When women were executed, it was usually privately, quietly, or symbolically contained. Perpetua and Felicity violated that expectation simply by standing there. Their presence unsettled the crowd, not because the crowd was compassionate, but because the spectacle no longer followed familiar rules. Rome selected a wild cow for Perpetua and Felicity. Not a lion, not a bear, a cow. This choice was deliberate. In Roman symbolism, the cow represented fertility, motherhood, and female domestication. The animal chosen was meant to mock their gender, their bodies, their refusal to submit. The cow charged. Perpetua was tossed violently into the air. Felicity was crushed against the ground. The crowd reacted not with cheers, but with shock. This was not clean violence. This was disorderly. Perpetua survived the initial assault. She stood. The first thing she did was adjust her torn clothing, not out of modesty, but dignity. Exposed flesh in the arena was meant to reduce the condemned to objects. She refused objecthood. Witnesses remembered this detail because it shattered expectations. This was not hysteria. This was composure. She then helped Felicity to her feet. Slave and noblewoman, again together. Again, hierarchy collapsed. The audience began to murmur. They had come to see terror. Instead, they were seeing mutual care. The arena was supposed to isolate the condemned psychologically, strip them of identity, and reduce them to bodies reacting to pain. Perpetua and Felicity resisted that reduction. Rome had lost control of tone. Meanwhile, the men, Saturninus and Revocatus, were attacked by leopards and bears. Blood was drawn. The crowd was satisfied there. Violence worked better when it fit expectation. Gender disruption was harder to digest. The cow was recalled. The women were injured, but not dead. This was a problem. The crowd demanded closure. Roman games required resolution. A spectacle that lingered without a clear ending risked sympathy. The editor of the games made a decision. They would be killed by the sword. Execution would be completed manually. Before the final act, the condemned were brought together. They exchanged the kiss of peace. This was not defiance. It was liturgy. In that moment, the arena stopped being Roman space. It became something else entirely. Felicity was led forward. Her body was still weak from childbirth. Her injuries from the cow were fresh. She had no social memory in Rome, no family line, no name worth preserving. She died without ceremony. Rome preferred it that way. Perpetua was last. The young gladiator assigned to her hesitated. He was inexperienced. His first strike failed. He wounded her, but did not kill her. She cried out not in fear, but in pain. This is important. Martyrdom is not numbness. It is endurance through sensation. Witnesses record what happened next. Perpetua guided the gladiator's hand to her own throat. This act terrified the crowd, not because it was violent, but because it reversed roles. Rome required executioners to dominate. Here, the condemned completed the act herself. Authority slipped. The arena did not erupt. It went quiet. Spectacle had failed to produce triumph. There was no catharsis, just bodies. Rome believed death erased resistance. It misunderstood memory. The crowd dispersed, but the story stayed. It traveled through households, markets, and congregations. It was written down, copied, preserved, not because it was inspiring, but because it was destabilizing. A noblewoman and a slave died together, not screaming, not begging. Rome could not explain that without questioning itself. The execution is complete, but the story is not. What follows is not victory or legacy. It is aftermath, quiet, unresolved, corrosive. Rome had rules for what happened during executions. It had far fewer for what happened after. The arena emptied the way it always did, slowly, unevenly distracted. Some spectators left early disappointed. Others lingered, unsettled by a spectacle that had failed to resolve cleanly. Vendors packed away food. Guards reclaimed their posts. The machinery of entertainment reset itself. Rome moved on quickly. It always did. What it did not account for was what could not be cleared from stone or sand. Memory. Roman victories were documented aggressively. Triumphs were carved into stone. Names of defeated enemies were preserved specifically to mark their erasure. Perpetua and Felicity received no such treatment. There was no inscription celebrating their execution. No public acknowledgement of success. No official narrative. Silence was intentional. Rome understood when a story was dangerous. The problem was that the story already existed. Perpetua had written it herself. The passion of Perpetua and Felicity survives because it was copied. Quietly, carefully, repeatedly. Not as propaganda, not as liturgy, as testimony. It did not read like official martyr acts commissioned later by the church. It lacked polish. It lacked theological framing. It lacked heroic exaggeration. It sounded human. That was the threat. Rome could dismiss myths. It could not easily dismiss a diary. Perpetua's voice remains calm, observational, emotionally contained. She does not perform sanctity. She does not explain herself to history. She simply records what happened. That restraint made the text believable. Believability undermined imperial messaging. Rome wanted the following buried: that a noblewoman refused her father publicly, that a slave gave birth in prison, and still chose death, that women disrupted the arena's gendered expectations, that execution did not restore order. Most of all, Rome wanted to forget that its hierarchy had failed. The empire was built on vertical loyalty. Gods above emperors, emperors above fathers, fathers above wives, wives above slaves. Perpetua and Felicity inverted that ladder without attacking it. They simply stepped off it. The executions did not inspire mass conversion. That is another myth. What they did was worse. They introduced doubt. Not theological doubt, structural doubt. If Rome could not compel gesture from someone like Perpetua, then its authority was conditional. If its punishments failed to reassert dominance, then violence was no longer proof of control. That realization did not spread loudly. It spread quietly. There is no record of Perpetua's father after the execution. No reconciliation narrative. No repentance arc. No public mourning. Rome does not preserve the stories of men who failed to maintain household authority. That silence is itself an indictment. The system that promised him control over his family destroyed his daughter publicly and left him with nothing. No honor, no legacy, no closure. Rome devoured its own. Even early Christians struggled with this story, not because it glorified death, but because it complicated obedience. Perpetua did not submit to her father. She did not submit to the state. She did not submit to gender expectations. That made her difficult to domesticate. Later traditions softened her edges. They emphasized obedience to God while quietly ignoring the social disobedience that made Rome react so violently in the first place. History tends to sand down what makes it uncomfortable. This text resisted that. Perpetua does not describe fear disappearing. She does not claim serenity replace pain. She does not frame death as victory. The diary ends abruptly. No reflection, no closure, no resolution. That incompleteness matters. It denies the reader emotional release. Rome believed the arena ended stories. In reality, it only ended bodies. Meaning escaped. It moved through whispered retellings, through copied manuscripts, through the quiet persistence of memory that refused to behave like defeat. Perpetua and Felicity did not overthrow Rome. They exposed its limits. This story does not instruct. It does not tell you what to feel. It does not tell you what to do. It does not promise transformation. It simply sits there. 2 women, 2 classes, 1 death, unchanged by time. There's nothing left to narrate. Only what remains when spectacle fails. Only the weight that does not resolve.